Welcome to everyone tuning in. It's a Monday evening. My goodness, I'm the doc, John Macaroon. My guy, Christian Boer's here. He manned the ship today. What a wild day. It would appear a couple of the beat writers decided that, look, another prominent beat writer's on vacation. I was trying to take a day off. I saw Christian, I saw the nice weather, and I'm like, okay, reasonably with a busy day scheduled for later this week as we check out another Lions practice, I was like, Monday should be relatively calm. Let's relax. Let's get out on the golf course, take advantage of being in the media and having an opportunity to review the Detroit Golf Club and their preparations for the Rocket Classic. So I'm out there having a good time. And I'm like, yeah, a couple good range sessions, which I posted online that you can see at Detroit Podcast. And I'm enjoying the day. It's sunny. I'm feeling good, vibing with everybody, talking to media friends, talking to those that I want to share some time with, thanking the Rocket Classic staff for letting me come in there and dress nice and play golf. My swing has been okay. Not bad. Serviceable. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the time, right, Christian? All of a sudden, you had a great story up, I think, around 11:30, and boom, it's like we're had a nice range session before the noon shotgun start, and then like within 12:15, I think the news broke around midday, and we're going to talk about it. It's wild. Can't even get a day off. Can't even get a day off. But for those paying attention, thank you on this Monday. Interact, ask questions. Christian and I are going to talk about it. It's a big deal. It's a big deal regarding the news of the day. Message, comment, hit the notification bell, like this stream, like the podcast, share it. I'm loving to see more and more beat writers interact with video and do podcasts. And thank you guys for your response. But Christian, the news of the day. Couldn't even enjoy the day off. Could not even literally, because I was thinking about it. And everybody on the course, as we were talking to other guys at the hole next to us, Frank Ragnow has decided to retire from the NFL. Many people really started to take notice of our reports at Lions on SI when we said, hey, others are kind of documenting that Frank's unhappy. He doesn't have any more guarantees. There probably were some discussions. And maybe, this is speculation. Maybe he got the word. There's not going to be anything. You play until your deal runs out and there's no more guarantees. Maybe that happened. And Frank said, you know what? Maybe some discussions happened, and that's why Tate Ratledge was indeed drafted. But I kind of look at it from the perspective of if Frank Ragnow started to have more and more doubts that he wanted to put in the grind to play this game, you got to put in long hours. You got to be dedicated. Ahmed Hassanin said it great. The pathway to greatness is obsession. You got to be all in as a football player to grind, to work, to put in the time, to be there, to be a player that the team can count on. And so the decision was made. Frank Ragnow retires. When that news broke, I was like, what? And at first I'm selfish. I'm like, no, I can't. I did an instant video, which you can check out at Detroit Podcast. But my first reaction, Christian, my first thought was, oh man, that's not really a great sign for the 2025 season. That was my thesis after the draft. My thesis, Christian, for this year was I'm hopeful for the future based on the picks and all the young talent, but I got fear for 2025. And the news that one of the top centers in the National Football League not being around for 2025 and calling it a day, man, we got a lot to unpack. But what was your reaction when you first heard the news? Where were you? I was on the golf course, and I was just approaching. I started off on the 18th hole, and I had a great drive, and I heard the news that Frank Ragnow has made the decision to call it and hang it up, call it a career.
Yeah, I had some morning errands to run, so I was, I got all my stuff for the morning done last night, and then I had to run some errands. I had just gotten home, just got in the door, and I think right at noon, Frank Ragnow put the Instagram post out that he was retiring from the NFL, and I think my first reaction was, it's a sad day for the Lions. Frank Ragnow was one of the best centers in the league. He was an unbelievable teammate from the looks of it. He was always known to play through a number of injuries and one of the toughest guys in the league too. And I think that when you look at what he put out there, it just kind of feels like the injuries caught up to him a little bit. And one of the things he said in his post was that he was going to listen to his body and hang it up. And I think that when you look at the fact that in 2023, he was on the injury report every week, it felt like, with 2 or 3 or even 4 injuries. I mean, remember all the slashes, knee slash ankle slash calf slash back, like that was 2 seasons ago. And then this past year, he played through a partially torn pec. Like, he was tough as nails. But I do think that eventually, and now we're seeing it, it caught up to him. And we documented the contract situation. And that certainly could be an underlying part of this. But I think my initial takeaway is that this is just a sad day for the Lions organization. And yes, there are options internally. And in a way, Ragnow not being there for OTAs benefited the team. It allows them to get some guys that we'll talk about later, allow them to get some first team reps, and for the Lions to kind of figure out which pairing's going to work best for the interior offensive line. But man, this is a bummer. This is a bummer because Ragnow, like I said, a warrior, did a lot of great things for Detroit off the field, just a really class act dude. And one of the best in the game at his position. And there's no doubt that the Lions are going to feel his absence. He was the centerpiece of the offensive line, tough as nails, very productive, the best run blocking center in the league last year, did it while dealing with a partially torn pec, tough as nails, and the Lions are going to miss him for sure.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about here in the next few segments, which will break down piece by piece what Frank Ragnow retiring means for the Detroit Lions. And when you look at it, a player that was an emotional leader for the team, I think that people definitely respected the grit that Frank Ragnow showed out with. Really embodied what Dan Campbell would want, is sacrificing your body, even though you're not practicing, willing to be out there for your teammates, to put aside any of the issues that you had, to hear that he had an inoperable, basically, toe condition that he was powering through, trying to manage. And I think people started to recognize that the end may be near when you heard the news that the hours that he was putting in just in the trainer's table, trying to just get through the week, even though he wasn't practicing, he was in that training room religiously trying to do all work possible so that he could be productive and be at that all-pro level. So it's unfortunate. I don't think it's contract related. I do think he was unhappy. I do think that not having any guarantee is going to be tough, but I think the organization probably was in the position of really looking at their options, and you see literally how the draft started to impact some of those decisions. I think the Lions, which is to credit them, I don't think in any way that they put him in a spot to feel forced to retire. I feel like if there's open dialogue, then that kind of conversation with Dan Campbell in the front office probably was starting to be discussed a little bit. And maybe there was some negotiating with Dan and Frank saying, hey, take some more time, take as much time as you need to make this decision, but it's your decision. And that's how the Lions are. They are, I feel, an organization that's ahead of the game. They understand that, okay, based on even if Frank was going to be back, you got to look to the future. They drafted a couple guys that could be players that could be centers of the future, or at least have options for 2025. But there's salary cap ramifications we're going to talk about. There are impact to some players on the roster that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about internal candidates, external candidates, and we'll discuss what's going to happen. What does this mean for the Detroit Lions? But I guess the thing I want to ask you, Christian, which I think a lot of people are going to wonder, is, first and foremost, does this mean that the 2025 season, is it in jeopardy? Is the chance now for success? It feels like the way I want to phrase it is, it's disrespectful to just be like one of those fans that's just like, Frank's gone, no problem, next man up. That's, I think, disrespectful to Frank. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the Super Bowl window is completely closed forever in a day. But let's be honest here. You don't lose a Pro Bowl center and rely on a rookie or an aging veteran to just pick up the pieces and move on. Frank had value. Reading blitzes, emotional leader, was among the best all-pro centers in the league. So when you say, oh, next man up, that is dismissive and, in my opinion, disrespectful to the player. Let's have some respect for the guys. As John Hughes says in the chat, a humble warrior. Let's have some respect for players that put in the work. I don't think you just up and replace Frank Ragnow. When you look at it, does the retirement of Frank Ragnow really put a bigger dent in the opportunity for the Lions to have success this year?
I'm going to stop short of saying that, like, season's over, the Lions can't Like, I'm not going to put the ceiling on the Lions season just based off of this, but they're going to, like I said, they're going to miss him. And it is going to be a challenge for them to perform at as high of a level in the run game as they have with Frank and Ragnow as the centerpiece, because there's a lot that goes into this. Like, as the center, he's responsible for identifying the Mike linebacker and calling out all the different schematic things they're going to do and who's blocking who and identifying blitzers. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot that goes into what he does. And that's not just going to be something that like a Tate Ratledge can pick up overnight. And so now this becomes one of the biggest storylines of training camp is who steps in for him, because it can make or break where this thing goes just because of how valuable the center is to that offense and the way they block different plays. He is like huge for this group. And so they're going to have to figure that out and find a reliable solution. And there's options on the roster, but they are going to miss him a lot. And I do think that he does bring an emotional element to it as well. He's a guy that all the guys lean on, and he seems like he's very stable and steady. And for that reason, he is kind of the heartbeat of the offensive line and this team. And the offensive line has always been one of the strengths of this team as they've been on this run in recent years where they've been one of the best teams in the league. So this is going to be a major area for them to figure out a solution and find it out fast, because this schedule is going to be a gauntlet. And you're going to play a lot of good defenses along the way, a lot of defense that have been battle tested and have played at a high level. You're talking about both teams that played in the Super Bowl, Washington, who knocked you out of the playoffs, Baltimore, who's always in the mix. They're a tough team to prepare for. Like, these are all things that you have to take into consideration now, and the Lions are going to have to figure this out because it's going to be tough. The schedule's not easy. These defenses that they're going to be up against are going to give them a lot of battles, and you're going to need somebody who you can rely on snapping the football. So it's going to be, man, it's going to be a test for sure.
And the hurdle's bigger. That's the fair point. If you're listening in, comment, let us know. Is the season in jeopardy? Is this a bigger loss? Or is it one of those deals where you feel like, hey, you guys are overreacting? There's still some talent on this roster. Let us know your perspective. I have more doubts. I can't sit here and disrespect Frank Ragnow and say, hey, Tate Ratledge, Graham Glasgow, those are guys who are just going to come in and dominate. There's going to be differences, as well as the different work with John Morton that's going to have to take place now. And so it was valuable. So remember, guys, when you read stuff at Detroit Podcast and you read, hey, let's start to compare the body types here. Let's start to see, hey, remember, one of the main observations that we talked about at Lions on SI was Tate Ratledge is taking a lot of snaps at center. If there's an issue with the contract, that probably, and my tweet was, let's look at their body types. Very similar. Size and weight. I said Frank knows. That was my tweet. I didn't know he was going to retire, but I did know that Frank knew that, I think they got my replacement. It was pretty clear. Tate Ratledge, Miles Frazier, opportunities. They probably are looking for the next center. And Tate Ratledge is getting that work. Guys, remember, when we do those observations, I'm not going out to Allen Park to report that Tate Ratledge is playing center for my health. That was notable. That was really interesting, as well as Colby Sorsdahl playing center. New guys playing center. Please check in and read fully what observations we're making, because it does lend to clues to maybe let you know where the Detroit Lions are at. Before we start talking about the salary cap ramifications, many people are kind of talking about it. How surprised are you that he retired? Does it come at you as a shock? Or when you start to put the pieces together, do you say to yourself, with Frank, he was hinting at it. He was starting to talk about it last offseason a little bit. Last couple years, maybe the health matters started to creep up. I'm shocked at the timing after June 1st. Maybe there's reasons why, but I'm a little bit surprised that he needed all this time. I think if the doubts were there, maybe before the draft, maybe before free agency, maybe he gave himself every single opportunity to make that decision and announce it now. But are you surprised that he made the decision?
Yeah. Yes, I am. I am very surprised, especially given the timing of it. Like, you'd rather know this sort of thing before the draft and before free agency, so that you can start to have a succession plan in place. And it makes you wonder if the Lions kind of knew ahead of time. And I'm sure they did, because Dan Campbell talked about how the players weren't there were communicating with him and the organization. So I'm sure they at least had an idea that this might be coming down the pipe at some point. Which is why they really took initiative to get Tate Ratledge out there at center during rookie minicamp and then in OTAs. So I do think that maybe they knew a little bit more than they were letting on. But to me, this was shocking. Like you thought that maybe it was. You start to read into the fact that it might be contract related, and then you start to think about. You look at the structure of his contract, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. But then all of a sudden, this comes, and it comes out of nowhere, really. Just on a Monday at noon, like here it goes. He's retiring. And you can't fault him for his decision, obviously. And it sounds like maybe he was trying to convince himself he had another year in him or something like that. But at the same time, it just, you come to that conclusion. It gets harder and harder to wake up in the morning, I'm sure, when you're feeling all these different aches and pains and bumps and bruises. So, it was an excellent career for him. And this is, like I said, a bummer for the Lions and shocking, as I'm sure it was to me, and I'm sure it was for a lot of the fans too.
Yeah, it's you sit here and it's still hard to think that just 8 hours ago it comes across the wire. Frank Ragnow retiring. It's the beginning of the end of the old guard. It's really the beginning of the new guard now, the phase 2 of the Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell era. Some of the old guard are starting to move on. Man, and remember, that's what we said in the NFL when I said in my column there, which thank you guys, you were respectful in reading it and debating it humbly and honestly. And some of you agreed, some of you disagreed. My opinion was Frank Ragnow should have held out. Like, hey, I need those guaranteed dollars. Maybe, you did a piece to kind of maybe say, give him 3 more years. I thought that was just a little bit much. They could have just added 1 more year and just spread out the hits and give him some more guaranteed dollars. But I don't think it was enough. I think he was unhappy that there was no more guaranteed dollars. But at the very token, he recognizes that, you know what, I've done it. I've done a lot. I think he banked over $50 million in his career. So he's got enough, I think, to last a lifetime and to be able to take care of himself and his family. In the bottom line, in a physical game, it's not worth it. And if you're not all in for the Detroit Lions and Frank was not all in, it clearly indicates that he was a player ready to move on, and you wish him the best of luck. But there are silver linings. It's not all doom and gloom. And I respect your guys' opinion on it. I respect what you think. I respect that there are opportunities to honor a player that served for the Detroit Lions and was a good player and a good person. Always just doing the right things and proving what he was about, what his character was about, his grittiness. So it's going to be missed. And a football player that I think is going to be a player that is going to be tough to replace. But we're going to talk about this very subject because a comment comes in and people are wondering regarding what's going on with the salary cap. And Christian did kind of take a look at that. So commenter gets in, is there anything to the fact that June 1st was the dead cap cutoff? Was this planned? And we're going to talk about the salary cap ramifications of Frank Ragnow retiring from your piece. And you can go check it out. And if you want an adjunct, if you want additional information in written form, Christian did in his article and again, you did a great job today in my absence, what the Frank Ragnow retirement means for the Detroit Lions. So what are the Christian, what are the salary cap ramifications of Frank now retiring? The silver lining is some more money's coming in to the bank for the Detroit Lions to spend. Hopefully, right now, Brett Holmes seems like he likes to keep those rainy day funds. So I don't know if he's going to spend it, but there's more available.
Yeah. So to put it simply, like this is gonna. My understanding is that this is gonna work as similar to what a post June 1st cut would look like for the Detroit Lions. And so essentially, that his base salary of $9.15 million this year, and then his base salary of $11.9 million next year, those weren't guaranteed. And so that's going to be money in the bank for the Lions. And then they'll add another $100,000. And I'm looking at his over the cap page just to make sure I get everything correct right now. He's also got a $100,000 workout bonus that he's not going to get. So you're going to get $9.25 million back with the cap this year. And then next year, he's got a $100,000 workout bonus and a $750,000 roster bonus, and that will go back in to the mix as well, in addition to the $11.9 million in base salary that he was scheduled to make in 2026. So you're going to get around, I'm going to double check this number here. So it's $9.25 million this year, $12.75 next year. So total of about 22 million over the next 2 years that are going to come back to the cap. This helps their cap situation in 2025, by the way. Like, 2026 and 2027, like we'll get into that because they've got a lot more decisions to make regarding future extensions and things like that that are going to impact the cap space. They already don't have a ton in 2026, but you've got some money in 2025. If there's somebody out there in the last year of a big contract and you want to make a crazy move, like you've got the resources to do it now. With that being said, there will be some money that they'll have to eat. And it looks like it's going to be about $8.4 million, and they can either eat all that money in 2025 or spread it out between 2025 and 2026. I've seen some other reporters talk about this, and it's kind of similar to when Kelvin Johnson retired, because there's a signing bonus in Ragnow's contract. The Lions, and again, this was a previous regime, but when Kelvin Johnson retired, you may remember that the Lions took that money back, and that caused an issue with Kelvin Johnson, and so they were on the rocks for a little bit there between the Lions and Kelvin Johnson. I don't anticipate that. I mean, and again, the Lions are well within their right to ask for that money because he's not going to play for them in 2025. But at the same time, the way the Lions have gone about things, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make a huge deal out of that. And it's not like it's a massive sum, especially the fact that they have all this cap room in 2025. So I would be surprised if there's an issue that comes out about that for sure. But again, it's a $1.2 million signing bonus for this year that they could potentially want. There is no signing bonus for 2026. So that's not going to be something that we have to worry about in 2026. So altogether, like I said, it's going to be about 22 million that they're going to have come back to them over the next 2 years, with the bigger amount coming next year to the value of about 12.75 million. You're going to get 9.25 million between his base salary and that workout bonus. And then next year with the workout bonus, the roster bonus, and the base salary as well. So, it frees up a little bit of money, which especially that 2026 money, when you're talking about Hutchinson and JMO both being on that fifth-year option and some other decisions you might have to make with that 2022 class, it's going to be beneficial. That's going to be stuff that they're going to benefit from having. So in a way, it helps the Lions a little bit. Obviously, you'd rather have the person and the player on the team, but it's a decent little consolation prize in terms of your cap space. So there are some benefits to this in terms of the financials. And then one more quick thing on this. When I was going through my Frank Ragnow extension prediction, you start to really think about whether or not it'd be possible. And I did make a prediction for the extension based on his market value and how I would approach it personally. And it was 2 years fully guaranteed, the third year with an option bonus. And the reason for that third year being an option bonus is because, number one, his age. And number two, you're going to have to make decisions in 2027 about Hutchinson and JMO because fifth year is in 2026. So those two guys, if you extend them, their first year of their extension would be in 2027. In addition to all the non-first round picks in 2023. So you're talking about Brian Branch and Sam Laporta in that group as well, being guys who the first year of their extensions would be in 2027. So this was by no means going to be an easy thing. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought maybe the Lions wouldn't do any sort of massive extension. Maybe it would just be a one-year thing. So again, this is a very interesting thing for the Lions in terms of the timing, in terms of what it means moving forward with the salary cap and the future of their offensive line.
Yeah, no doubt. And so to the points regarding the comments, very good comments. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
We are interactive. To the point. Look, I think Brad Holmes is a general manager that can think 3 moves ahead. So I do think that Miles Frazier and Tate Ratledge and the decision made to play him at center was not just a decision that said, hey, let's just cross-train him. I think that once you saw what was the plan, I think that look at the body types. Just look at Frank Ragnow's body type and look at Tate Ratledge. Very similar. I think many people believe that he's a viable option in the future. I think he was drafted with the intention of whether it be this year or in the future to be a replacement. And Miles Frazier as well, an opportunity to have times out there. But I do think Tate Ratledge is the center of the future. It kind of looks like that. But we're going to talk about that here in a few minutes regarding what the options are going to be in terms of the roster. But look, I do want to address this point because I did see it online as I was, reminder guys, I was as you can see this presentation. I put together, I followed the dress code at the Detroit Golf Club, the private club there. And I was dressed up and hitting nice golf balls. And I was starting to see people's reaction. Oh, Frank did this because he's mad and he upset the apple cart and he did this on purpose. He screwed the Lions. That did not happen. First and foremost, Christian just rattled off. This is going to help potentially ease some of the burden. Some more cash is coming in for an emergency. And there is contingency plans that have clearly been in place. Frank did not screw the Lions. Did he help the team's cause to help them win this year? Oh, that's not something you can say, honestly, unless you're being a fanboy, that, oh, yeah, this is great news. You lost all-pro center, best one in the NFL. Yeah, great news there. But look, Brad Holmes' job is to know these things, to kind of think ahead to move. So that's why they drafted 2 offensive linemen in this draft. And they also tried Kobe Sorsdahl at center, too, over the last couple practices. So maybe you have opportunities as well. So it takes time. It will take time, but there are some salary cap ramifications, and hey, there's some dollars coming. So this is a good sign. But I do think some people are wondering, all right, what's the best option here? In my humble opinion, you go with experience. I think you train and you get Tate Ratledge is going to get a baptism by fire. Preseason, Tate's the man at center. Learn the job. Regular season starts, I know people's opinion, and I saw right away somebody posted, I'm not going to post the comment. They were like, listen, I'm not really a fan of seeing Graham Glasgow at center. I do think he's better at center than he is at guard. And maybe that's not terribly too much of a difference, but I do think that you start the year and just see, because that's a lot of pressure with the good opponents. You start with the Packers and the Bears. You know they're going to be, if Tate Ratledge is there chomping at the bit. I do think that Graham Glasgow, with the experience that he's got, with the understanding of the offense, with the understanding of Jared Goff, I'm always of the opinion, like a coach, you go with the veteran. Now, it doesn't go right, you quickly pivot. I think there's options. And the options are Graham Glasgow to start the year. And if it's a benefit, great. But you guys let us know. Graham Glasgow, or should just Tate be given the reins? Hey, this is the NFL. You're drafted, 2nd-round pick. We invested in you. We made a trade to get you. So you're the guy. Let us know what you think. Am I wrong? Am I too optimistic? I would go with Graham Glasgow. And I really appreciate the commenters that have been respectful and weighing in. You can disagree. I'm not the almighty. I have my opinions. I share them. You may like them. You may not like them. But that's my job, is to give them. And luckily, I have people that want to hear them. And thank for all of you that are listening in right now on a Monday night. I appreciate that. But, Christian, give us your thoughts on the internal candidates that potentially could replace Frank Ragnow. Who's the best option? What do you like? Am I right? Do you have a different opinion? What do you think should happen?
I think Graham Glasgow's your guy to start the year at the least. He's somebody who's done it before. He's played a lot of games at center. He's always been the guy over the last 2 years to step up when Ragnow went down. I believe he's made a total of 4 starts in the last 2 years just at center. And I think that will be the first thing that the Lions look to, is Glasgow will slide over to center, and then you get Ratledge and Mahogany as your guards. But I do think that they're not gonna just let Ratledge just go play guard full time. He's gonna get reps in practice. He's probably gonna play in the preseason. The Lions hardly ever play their vets in the preseason, and so you're probably gonna see Tate Ratledge play some at center in the preseason. And if he looks good, then maybe that's a different conversation. But I do think that he's, being somebody who, it'd be one thing if Tate Ratledge had at least dabbled a little bit at center in college, so that he was at the very least familiar of what's asked of a center at this level. But he was almost, I believe, exclusively actually at guard in college. And because of that, I think that Graham Glasgow is the easier and more natural fit to start at center to begin the year at the very least. Now, if he doesn't find his groove again, and it's more like 2024 than 2023, then maybe you decide, hey, like this isn't working, and either bump him to guard, or you slide Ratledge to center. And if Giomanu is playing well, then maybe you let him get a chance at guard with Chris Mahogany. Coyote Awasika's still out there. They've got a lot of options as to who could step in. And Miles Frazier's another one. So they've got options now. So they don't have to feel like they're forced to do anything. But I think at this stage, going with the veteran right away, especially when you're running the gauntlet with trips to Green Bay and Baltimore within the first 3 weeks, 2 places that are very tough to play, I think you got to go with experience and guys who have been there and done that before. So if my pick right now to start the year is Graham Glasgow. I think in best case scenario, he's your guy for the remainder of this season, and then you can feel it out and evaluate. Because if he's okay and the Lions are winning games, I wouldn't make the switch to not even take any chances to upset the apple cart. Like, you just ride it out with your veteran, but you always have to have Ratledge ready to go in the event of an injury. If things start to get really bad, and things of that nature, he's got to be ready to go. But I think Glasgow's your guy to start the year, and I think best case scenario, he does enough to keep the job throughout the entire year, and the Lions are able to go back to the postseason and make a little bit of a run.
Okay, you did your film review. What does Tate Ratledge bring to the table? What is the reason the Lions traded up for him? Let's do a recap and reset. Because this is a guy that looks like he understands the position. Obviously, a Georgia Bulldog that understands the idea of being gritty. He welcomed those tough practices. He said he loved it. He loved winning those battles at tough practices at Georgia. And many people believe that he's suited to play a lot of the positions along the offensive line. And I do think he's going to pretty much pressure Graham Glasgow pretty quickly. There's a segment of the population that wants Tate Ratledge. For those that see that, what's your thoughts? And we'll talk about external candidates. Yes, we will. Christian definitely did a deep dive on that as well. But if Tate is the guy, what athletic traits, what's in that scouting report that can give some fans a little bit of hope that, all right, if it's Tate Ratledge down the road in the postseason or in a couple years, is in the framework of the Detroit Lions roster, is Tate Ratledge the center of the future?
I mean, he's got the physical characteristics to be the center of the future. He's a very athletic, big, strong offensive lineman. He moves well. He was hampered a little bit by an ankle surgery throughout his senior year, but at the same time, when he got healthy and he went to the combine, I think he was able to show off just how athletic he is when fully healthy. So I think as long as he can stay healthy and not have any ailments holding him back early, I think this is a guy who's going to do good things for the Lions. I think he's good enough to start at guard. With the ability to, as he continues to learn the center position, then that's something we can start to take into account. And the Lions are certainly investing in him at the position. And I know part of it's just cross training him and this, that, and the other, but there's an avenue for him to come back to Detroit when it's training camp, and he's all of a sudden your guy going forward. I don't think that's going to be the case, but he does have a lot of the physical tools, the athletic tools to be somebody who can help you out at that position. The biggest test for him, I think, is going to be everything that comes with playing center from a mental perspective, where he's making checks, he's shifting protections, things like that he wasn't asked to do playing guard. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for him at center. But in terms of physicality and athleticism, he's set up pretty well. He's got the frame. He can move. He's strong. He doesn't overextend in pass protection. He keeps his hands in nice and tight. Does a good job of reacting to interior rushers when they try to get after the passer. So, like I said, physical tools, set. Athletic tools, set. The biggest challenge for him in terms of becoming the center of the future is going to be everything mental and everything else that comes with playing the position.
Yeah, I do think that Tate Ratledge is the center of the future. I just see that. I see the size. I see the comparisons. I feel like when you trade up, that means we like you for a reason. So I feel like the Lions knew that that he was an individual that could play a lot of different positions. And to Pat's point, no, he didn't play too much center in college. A lot of guard spots. And
I don't think he did at all.
Exactly. So this will be new. But I don't think it's too tall a task for a player with that skill set. And like Christian said, reviewing the film, go back and review. Lions on SI, type it in. Tate Ratledge film review. You can see why we think he's the guy. He's the center of the future. I do think he is the center of the future. But to reset it, I think the opening day one offensive line is left tackle Taylor Decker, left guard Christian Mahogany, center Graham Glasgow, right guard is Tate Ratledge, and right tackle is Penei Sewell. And that gives you a pretty decent chance with two young offensive linemen to handle business with a healthy center. And then it gives, like I said, opportunities to mix and match at different spots. Should some injuries happen, Colby Sorsdahl might be the guy. He might end up having an opportunity. So pay attention to that name. Probably a guy that maybe now has moved off of the roster bubble and maybe into a spot if he can play center can be a guy that can earn a spot maybe in that Graham Glasgow role. Maybe he can learn from Glasgow in this upcoming year. So it'll be interesting to see and to monitor. That's why we'll be out there again on Thursday. Well, okay, I wasn't supposed to say that, but we'll be out there again this week on the day before Friday to be out there at practice. I think you guys can follow along and figure out when the media schedule is. But it's fun to get out there and to see. But you also did. Now, I don't think people were thrilled at some of those names, but there are names. Do you think, Brad Holmes, it would behoove the general manager of the Detroit Lions to go outside of the organization? I feel like it's tough because it seems like Brad has his checklist and he's like, we need grit. We need toughness. We need locker room fit. We need cap flexibility. We need good age, history of health. And it's like, oh, and they ain't going like, well, we can take one off the list and that. They're like, we need all these things checked off the list before we make that commitment. So externally, I think it's tough, but we have to explore it. That's our job. I do think that there's opportunities to explore what's out there. Detroit Lions on SI has it. 8 candidates who could replace Frank Ragnow externally. Who are the top candidates that you liked, or that are free agents that are available, or maybe someone that could come in and compete with Graham Glasgow as a veteran?
I think priority A should be Daniel Brunskill. Daniel Brunskill's been around the block a little bit. He's played for a while in the NFL. He's played a lot of different positions. And I think when you talk about somebody who can give you that value of going in and contributing at center, he's the guy who can do that. But then also the fact that he's played, center, guard, tackle, all recently too. This isn't just somebody who minors in one position and maybe goes out there for a couple snaps, whatever. No, this is somebody who, just this past year, he played a bunch of games at left tackle in a reserve role. He started a handful of games at center and then also started at right guard in week 17 for Tennessee in their game against Jacksonville. So he's got a very diverse background when it comes to the positions that he plays. He's a vet. He's been around different schemes. He spent some time in San Francisco, last 2 years in Tennessee, and he's still out there. I think that would be somebody that the Lions would benefit from bringing in, because at the end of the day, he's going to come in and be competitive in training camp. He's going to push these younger guys for a spot. And if he makes the team, he's somebody who can help the team and play at a high level. If you want to go the UFL route, I got a couple of names from the UFL, just looking around. The center market is pretty thin at this stage of the offseason. We've seen a couple retire already. David Andrews is one of them. Just guys who are playing in the UFL. One name that stood out to me, former Spartan Dog, you'll probably like this, forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, Mike Panasiuk. He was a guy who played at Michigan State, earned all Big Ten honors a couple times. He was just named all UFL at the center position. I believe this is the second time he's earned that honor. He's been with 3 different NFL organizations, but hasn't stuck with any of the teams he's been on. Performing at a high level in the UFL. He's going to be 28 in October. So if he's ever going to make it in the NFL and latch on with a team, now would be the time to do that for him. Lee Fautanu was a guy they brought in originally as a UDFA. They waived him when they signed a couple of rookie minicamp players. He might be somebody they look to bring back because he was with the team for rookie minicamp, started to learn installs, things of that nature. Maybe not as far behind the 8 ball as somebody that you'd bring in completely externally. Connor McGovern, not the Buffalo Bills. Connor McGovern, this one played for the New York Jets and the New Orleans Saints this past year, drafted by the Broncos in 2016. So he's been around the league a lot. Somebody, again, who's done it, played multiple positions, can come in and help. And then one more, if you're looking for UFL guys in the backyard, how about Noah Johnson, Kansas State product? He's playing for the Michigan Panthers as their starting center right now. So if they wanted somebody who could be there by the second session of OTAs, I know the Panthers have a playoff game coming up, so maybe not this week, but you're talking about somebody who wouldn't have to go super far to get to Detroit, and travel wouldn't be a massive issue. So, there's not a lot of great names that when you look at them and you just sit there and you love it. But again, I think somebody like Brunskill could be a huge help because he could be a veteran, 1-year deal, very low risk bringing him in, but somebody who's played center and started games at center, in addition to having positional flexibility, who could help you out in multiple ways. I think that's tier A. And then a guy like Panasiuk, who all UFL, right? If there was ever a time for him to come in and contribute on an NFL roster, it'd be now. So those are just a couple of the names I'm keeping an eye on.
All right. I think that's a fair early recap of the impact of Frank Ragnow. With our last 5-10 minutes, we will turn our attention to what's going to take place later this week. Can't officially say, but it's probably 24 hours before Friday that we'll be out there again. Not saying officially the day, but 24 hours before Friday. There'll be another opportunity for myself to watch practice. And what a blessing. Thank you guys. I think you guys know that, behind all the gruff and the direct responses to things, you guys put me there. You guys are the reason. The 250 of you now watching live on a Monday, you could be doing anything. The thousands that have started to subscribe, you guys have impacted media. Media members are saying, oh man, we have to do videos. Yeah, we've been doing videos since 2019. We knew the importance of it as well as the written work. And others are starting to see, oh yeah, every single outlet has a podcast. And remember, Doc, Detroit Sports Podcast 2013. So if you're a fan of WWE, am I a visionary? Am I a revolutionary? No. Others were doing podcasts before me, but there were less than 10 that were doing it on a weekly basis. And if you go to @Detroit Podcast, you will see Doc and Jock is on episode 643, I believe, consecutively since 2013, every single Thursday from 2013 until the present, each and every Thursday, no best ofs. There's been a live concurrent podcast talking about Detroit sports. And so I do think that you guys have made it so that videos are important to go along with the great written work. That's why I love broadcasting with Christian and firing it up, because we can talk about good stuff now, and we can talk about stuff in the past as well, and things that relate to the Detroit Lions. And you guys are liking the videos, and I really humbly appreciate you guys commenting and saying, hey, we like the videos. Thank you for coming on and sharing what you know. That's it. I'm just a regular guy that's just sharing what I know, not behind any paywalls. I do say that the biggest thing that keeps us free is you guys' support. You guys are crazy. You're rabid Detroit sports fans, and I like to think I'm one of them as well. And so that's why I love doing it. It's not work. I don't want to stop. Like if we could broadcast for 3-4 hours, if I didn't have people to answer to, and they'd be like, where's Doc? He's podcasting. That's what I want to be doing. And I think that's where I woke up today. I really do believe, just a little small side tangent here, I really do believe that the algorithms do like to send me stuff that I like to read, and to see Hassanian say the pathway to greatness is obsession. I believe it. I'm obsessed with podcasting. I love it. I just love it. And that's why I was like, dang it, I want to play golf. I'm torn. I'm having fun, but I want to get back to the office and talk to my guy and break down the news of the day. So it's not all doom and gloom. Football will go on, and Dan Campbell will answer for it. Dan Campbell will talk about what he knew, when he knew it, and he'll talk about the news that Frank Ragnow retired this upcoming week, and we'll start to learn a little bit more insight. But there's more practices to come. I do want to see, hopefully, some more of the participants that were gone back. But what we see, hopefully, we get to see Tesla, Terry, and Arnold. We didn't really get a chance to highlight because we were on the side of the field with Ennis Rakestraw. I do want to see, and you will get some commentary from me at Lions on SI about DJ Reed, because it seems like he was naturally a good fit. I want to write about him. I want to write about Manu more, the second team and third team offensive line units, what that now looks like. That's going to be important. That's going to be something to pay attention to. I want to see J-Mo get the ball a little bit more. I want to see number one kind of showcase some of that after a couple days. I do want to see the backups do a little bit better job, because humbly, I said it could change, but my job is to give the opinion on the day I give it. My first opinion after OTA was, Hendon Hooker and Kyle Allen did not look good. They did not impress. Bad week, stock down for Hendon Hooker and Kyle Allen week 1, but it's not permanent. They could have a good couple days and turn things around, start to build that momentum, because I haven't seen anything different. I have literally not seen anything different. So for the fans, they're like, oh, you're too harsh. I'm like, how much more time you want me to go out there? Like, I go out there to see some good quarterback play. I see it from Jared Goff. I didn't see it from the others. It was clear. Even my old eyes needed a little bit of time to go, man, this quarterback play was not good. Ooh, holding on to the ball too long. Kyle Allen would have ate the turf. Hassanian would have I want to set the stage. I think I said it last time, but I want to set it again because it was just amazing. Like, literally, Hassanian was going to plow into, like, if it was a live rep, Hassanian would have went into Kyle Allen and taken his helmet off. He would have had a free run into the quarterback, and it would have been a big hit. It would have been something, but it's not live. And Kyle Allen got the ball off, but it was just second and third. I want to see the second and third team play better this go around. Impress me. One guy, just impress me. Shut me up, because I don't want to talk about getting new quarterbacks. I like hopefully Hendon Hooker and Kyle Allen to have a competition. I hope it's not like 2022. My column was, man, this reminds me of 2022. Those guys both got cut, David Blau and Tim Boyle, because we were sitting out there doing the same thing. We're like, this doesn't look good. I can already remember 2022, Christian, you were here. And I was like, ooh, this reminds me of that. I don't want to think of that. So that's what I want to see. Let us know in the chat, in the comments. What do you want to see? What do you want to read about? We will definitely, if you guys want to read about it, we'll find it out. Manu will give an opinion on the offensive line. Like I said, players that return. And I do think that there's a lot to talk about. What are you expecting what do you expect to read about this coming week about the Lions' final OTA practice before a nice 6-week break for us reporters?
Well, I think the first thing that we're going to have to keep an eye on is who shows up, right? Because in the past, when they've done, OTA and then mandatory minicamp and then an OTA, traditionally that last OTA before the break, there's fewer and fewer starters and veterans and guys like that who show up. So I think that part of the explanations and the things that we're going to see from this week's OTA open practice is just who shows up. What guys are there? I mean, we already had one without St. Brown and a bunch of other prominent faces, and I wouldn't be shocked if there's even less players who partake in the last voluntary set of OTAs. It's like, again, it's voluntary. Their training camp is going to be fast approaching. They're going to start it earlier than they normally do because they're playing in the Hall of Fame game, and as a result, wouldn't be surprised to see a few more guys just feel like, you know what, I'm gonna start my vacation a week early. So I'll be definitely reading into who shows up. But with that being said, some of the names you just mentioned, the Hendon Hookers of the world, the Gio Manus of the world, they're going to be there. They're going to be there, and they're going to have an opportunity to own this moment and prove to the coaching staff that they're ready for a bigger workload. And I saw that comment that you just popped up there about trading Hendon Hooker for a veteran center. I mean, that's something you might need to look into. The one thing I'll say to that is I'm not certain what Hendon Hooker's value is across the league. I think that when they put Teddy Bridgewater ahead of him in the playoffs, I think that was kind of saying the quiet part out loud a little bit. And I think because of that, I'm just not so certain that Hendon Hooker has a ton of value around the league. Obviously, his value is highest right now because nobody knows what he is. He hasn't really appeared in any significant regular season action. He looked all right in the preseason last year, especially that Pittsburgh game. But at the same time, like, I'm just not sold that his value is going to be enough for them to go out and get a guy who can be a bona fide starter for them. But again, he's got a chance to change the narrative this week when he goes out there for OTAs. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if, Jared Goff decides that he wants to have an extra week of vacation. Or Penei Sewell wants to have an extra week of vacation. These are mandatory workouts. These are guys that have been there all offseason long. Nobody's going to hold it against them if they take a couple of practices off. So who shows up and who shows out? Those are the two things I'm looking forward to for the OTAs this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be intriguing. A lot of competition. I do hope there's a competition period, something that we can see in team periods and good 7-on-7 action. And you did a great piece as well to wrap up here. Look at that, sharing my own comment out here. That is quite funny here. But that's the last thing that is out here is to talk about the stock watch here. And I'll get that banner up here real fast. But you did a nice piece at Lions on SI. And what you talked about is after the first week, we know that certain players were highlighted, certain players weren't. And it was clearly, to me, the quarterbacks that stocks were down. But I want to have you focus on sharing who impressed you, who can build upon week one moving forward. And let's check in with the Detroit Lions stock watch, meaning who impressed you week one, what can be built upon this coming week at practice. I do think that the likes of DJ Reed, Ennis Rakestraw can continue to shine. I do think that Khalif Raymond can continue to showcase that he's a reliable option. Sam Laporta definitely can build upon what he's going to be required to do, which is to be a reliable target. And I think that there's a lot of good players that showcased that they had a decent time. And I think the defensive ends, Marcus Davenport, Aiden Hutchinson, Ahmed Hassanin, I thought had a decent opportunity. The defensive line can continue to grow. I thought the second and third team defensive line units really dominated the second and third team offensive line. So we'll see how the reserves, do they get a boost? Do they get a jolt from the news about Frank Ragnow? So talk about the stock watch. Who's on your list as being an ascending player moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, the Jameson Williams hype train is taking off like a rocket, like next stop Mars for Jameson Williams. When you talk about everything that has been said about him throughout the offseason, but I thought the biggest thing that stood out to me was the change in perspective that he appears to have. He talked about having an extra pep in his step on account of becoming a veteran in that wide receiver room and helping to lead guys like Isaac Tesla and these younger players in the room, like the UDFAs that have come in. And he kind of gets to be the guy that they look to for answers and advice. And he can be a leader in that group. And the way he talked about it made me smile a little bit. Like, J-Mo is stepping up as a leader in that wide receiver room heading into year 4. I loved hearing him talk about the new perspective he has and how he wants to continue to be more consistent and play at a high level. So that's somebody I'm really pumped about. Marcus Davenport was another name that stood out to me. If he can stay healthy, he can be a guy that will pair nicely with Aiden Hutchinson. And then Ennis Rakestraw was another guy who had a couple of teammates sing his praises a little bit. Had the opportunity to play quite a bit on the outside with Terrion Arnold not being in action. And I thought, based on everything I read, he did pretty well out there. He might have dropped an interception, but at the same time, it looked like he had some pretty good reps in coverage and working against the first team wide receivers. So looking forward to seeing what he can do in week 2 of OTAs. And then when you talk about the guys with lower stock, and I don't mean to continue to harp on this, but Broderick Martin, it's tough to see where he fits when you whittle this roster down to 53 with Tyleik Williams being there and obviously Roy Lopez and DJ Reader as veterans. I just have a hard time seeing Broderick Martin fitting in. The battle that you wrote about was for that last kind of safety spot. The Lions have Dan Jackson, who they drafted. Ian Kennelly is the guy that Jim O'Neill talked about as being a very intriguing undrafted free agent. I just don't know where like a Morris Norris or a Lawrence Strickland, like they're going to have to play really well in order to keep this thing rolling. I had Kingsley Aguakun on here. Obviously, this was pre-Ragnow news. He has kind of new life a little bit. But when you see that Kobe Sorsdahl and Michael Neese are also repping at center, it just makes you think, is Aguakun going to be a guy that reps with the third team and plays later in these preseason games? Maybe his future isn't as set in stone. But then again, the Ragnow retirement kind of gives him new life. And then the last one I had on here was just backup quarterback play. Like you wrote about it, the backup quarterback play they need to continue showing growth. I'm not ready to hit the panic button yet. I'm not ready to slam the panic button. But there needs to be steps taken. And with Kyle Allen, it could just be as simple as he's still acclimating to the system. But this is also a veteran who's played in a lot of different systems and has kind of carved out a role as being a reliable backup. So he's going to have to be somebody who takes it up a notch. Again, this is all stuff that we're going to get more concrete visions on when the pads come on in training camp. But I do think that as you start to do a little bit of the roster math, you start to kind of pinpoint different areas where guys might be in trouble in terms of having a spot on the final 53-man roster. So that's just kind of what my takeaways were from the first week of OTAs. And I'm intrigued to see week 2, especially, and I'm not reporting anything by any means, but given the nature of how they've handled this last OTA in previous years, like there may be some starters and guys who just take an extra week for their vacation ahead of training camp. And for that reason, you're going to see some of these guys who are on my stock down list have an opportunity to prove themselves and go out there and do this. So again, this is going to be a big week for some. And then after this, it's a couple weeks down, and then it's training camp time.
No doubt. And then with our last, probably 120 seconds, last 2 minutes. Thank you guys for spending the last hour with us as we talked about the big breaking news and what that means. But there's also roster news. The Detroit Lions swapped cornerbacks. It looks like they added a new defensive back and they cut one, an undrafted free agent. Didn't spend all that much time with the Detroit Lions. What happened today on Monday? Tell us a little bit about the new acquisition, the new cornerback that was added to the Detroit Lions roster. The Detroit Lions swapped cornerbacks as a Monday roster move ahead of week 2 of OTAs.
Yeah, so they waived undrafted cornerback Gavin Holmes, who came from Texas. I did see that it was waived injured, so it looks like there might have been something that popped up, and maybe he was waived with an injury designation. I'm sure we may learn more about that in the coming days. And then they signed Devad Wilson. Again, apologies if I mispronounced his first name. Devad Wilson played formerly for the Arizona Cardinals and the New York Giants. He played collegiately at Georgia and Central Florida. He had a nice career in college, particularly at Central Florida. Between his 2 stops in college, he had 152 total tackles, 6 interceptions, and 1 sack. So a pretty good player. Went undrafted in 2023. He was with the Cardinals organization. He spent some time on the practice squad. He was elevated a couple times for regular season games. And then eventually the Giants signed him off of the Cardinals practice squad. He was able to get some run for New York over the end of the season. Again, we'll see if this is just a kind of a camp acquisition to fill out the roster. Obviously, the waived injured thing, anytime you see that, you think that maybe this is just a guy they're bringing in. But at the same time, he has some experience. He's played NFL. He's got some special teams experience as well. So he could be an under-the-radar name. He'll be a guy to keep an eye on when you get out on the field and watch that practice. So, this is a guy who could maybe be a dark horse. Who knows? Anytime they add somebody to the roster who's got experience playing in the NFL, whether it's 1 game or 100 games, they've done it. They've been to that level, and so there is some intrigue here. Obviously, the Georgia background, right? Who's shocked they bring in another Georgia guy. So, just another name to keep an eye on as we continue throughout this process.
Yep. Check in with Detroit Lions on SI as we bring you insider analysis, highlights, videos, opinions, what our thoughts are regarding the Detroit Lions and their roster, salary cap. We will keep you in the know regarding everything that you need to know about the Detroit Lions, whether you're in the state of Michigan or outside. Detroit Lions on SI, free coverage. Lions on SI YouTube. Hit that notification bell. We are coming to you regularly, once, twice a week. Regular videos as well. Shorter content as well. Full podcasts. Everything that you would like in a Detroit Lions YouTube channel. Similarly, all our videos are featured directly as well at Lions on SI and all over the internet as we get an opportunity, the blessings to have our content shared all across the internet. Thank you to the nearly 300 people who joined in on a Monday. Thanks for the comments. If you liked it, feel free to comment. You guys know I'm there in the comments. I'll read your comment. I'll take your thoughts on what you think. If you agree or disagree with anything, if you feel like I'm being too much of a Debbie Downer, let me know. Like I said, it's always intriguing. Be respectful. Stay kind. They're just my sports opinions. And that is what I am, how I feed my family, is to give my sports opinions and to talk and do a Detroit Lions podcast and to cover the team. You may not like it. And I always truly believe that if you like everything that I'm doing, then I'm not doing my job properly. I have to say things. I have to give you opinions that you disagree with. There's so many people out there. There's so many opinions to give that there's no way you can agree with everything. But I think we can humbly and respectfully have sports debates each and every day. And we'll be here to take your answers, take your calls, take your comments. We will be here. We will stand up, stand tall, stand in the fire if you need to express what you think. And like I said, make your case. You can insult me if you want, but it just really just kind of ends up having your comment go nowhere, or, let you guys know you get shadow banned, which is you can talk to nobody and your comment, you think your comment goes out there, but you get shadow banned. It doesn't go anywhere. So have a debate. That's what it's all about. I think that gets you further than just to insult me, because at this point in time, it's great to let you guys know we've been since 2019. So 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and now this is 25, our 7th season covering the Detroit Lions in the NFL. 7. So programming note, this week will be the last week of Detroit Lions practice coverage, but Christian and I are not going anywhere. We love this too much. Maybe it'll end up being a once a week podcast with periodic videos, but we are not going anywhere. We don't take breaks from doing the videos. We've been doing videos since 2019, and we've been putting it up there on the Detroit Lions on SI website for 7 years. We don't take breaks. We don't just pop in and out when we feel like it. We do these videos consistently, and we understand the value of what you guys want, and we appreciate it. If there's anything you want to know about, let us know. Let us know, comment, hit the notification bell. So as soon as we fire it up, you get the notification. And thank you humbly to the 300 people that tuned in across the various platforms. And we'll be back probably to recap what we saw week 2. And maybe I'll have a special guest this week as well. So maybe 3. 3 full podcasts. As you guys support it, we'll keep doing it. So thank you for the early subscribers. Nearly 2,000 subscribers already and growing. Thank you guys so much. Our time has come to a close. Long day for the doc. Great day on the golf course. Detroit Golf Club. They let me on. I played 18 holes. They let me off. So it's great. Great day. No better day. And listen, that guy right there held it down. And no better person to give you Detroit Lions news. My right-hand guy, Christian. And then I'll be back tomorrow with all the opinions, highlights as well, analysis of your Detroit Lions. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to one of your favorite podcasts. I know we're in the mix. One of your favorite podcasts. That one right there. The Detroit Lions on SI Lone Wolves podcast.